There's something weirdly funny about watching the most powerful space wizards in the galaxy get taken out by the troops they literally just had lunch with. Like, imagine being able to sense emotions, glimpse the future, and deflect laser blasts mid-air, but you don't notice the guy standing behind you with a blaster and an oddly specific order number. That's not just irony, that's cosmic-level facepalm energy. And we're supposed to believe the Jedi were the guardians of peace and justice in the galaxy. Really, because from where I'm sitting, they looked more like an ancient book club trying to run a war from a boardroom with bad lighting and worse decision-making. The Sith planned this thing for like 1,000 years, and the Jedi fell for it in, 20 minutes? But it's not like they didn't have chances. They knew something was off. They could feel it. They talked about the dark side clouding everything like they were trying to blame their problems on the galactic weather. Yet when it came time to actually do something about it, they sat in chairs and talked in circles and sent literal children to fight droid armies. And the clones. Oh man, the clones. Custom-built soldiers commissioned under shady circumstances by a guy no one heard from in years. And the Jedi's response was basically, wow, thanks for the army, guess we're generals now. No questions asked, no paperwork, just lightsabers and trust falls, with troopers named after numbers. It's like the Jedi forgot how to be Jedi. They weren't defenders of peace anymore. They were pawns in a war. They didn't even try to win smartly. The Force didn't fail them. They failed to listen, to look deeper, to ask the one question that might have saved them. Why does this feel wrong? In this video, we're breaking down how Order 66 didn't have to be the catastrophic blindside it became, how the Jedi had every opportunity to see it coming and stop it, and why their downfall wasn't just tragic, it was preventable. And honestly, kind of their own fault. So here's a question that's been bugging me for a while. How did the most powerful, force-wielding institution in the galaxy, the ones who are literally trained to sense danger before it happens, not see Order 66 coming? I mean, seriously. You've got thousands of Jedi scattered across the stars, decades of experience, access to the Senate, and they still got wiped out like background extras in their own movie. It's not like there weren't warning signs either. The clones appeared out of nowhere, were grown in secret on a mystery ocean planet, and just so happened to be perfectly loyal, perfectly skilled, and ready for deployment on cue. That alone should have raised more red flags than a Sith parade, but the Jedi just rolled with it like this was all totally normal galactic procedure. Even when the war started, they never questioned why a Jedi-led military backed by a clone army was something they were suddenly fine with. Yoda, Mace, Obi-Wan, they all signed on without digging deeper into who was really pulling the strings. It's like someone handed them the keys to a ticking time bomb, and they said, sure, let's drive. And don't get me wrong, hindsight is easy. But these are Jedi. They're supposed to be able to feel when something's off. And yet Palpatine managed to stand next to them for years while radiating dark side energy like a space heater, and no one batted an eye. So what happened? Was it arrogance, complacency, political blindness, or maybe all three? Because when you look at the whole thing from a distance, it starts to feel less like a shocking betrayal, and more like a trap they walked into with both eyes closed. Alright, now here's where I start to lose it. Because the more you dig into it, the more you realize this wasn't some genius-level masterstroke by Palpatine. It was a con built on the Jedi's refusal to question anything. The guy literally tells them he'll keep emergency powers until the crisis abates, and they all just nod. Like they didn't hear the villain monologue in real time. Let's not forget. This is the same Jedi Council that actively dismisses Anakin's visions of death and betrayal. They put him on Palpatine detail, suspect him of being unstable, and then don't tell him anything about their plan to arrest the Chancellor. And somehow they're surprised when that backfires. Like, yeah, no way that emotionally conflicted Chosen One might flip if you isolate him and give him zero trust. And how about the clone army itself? Not once did the Jedi do a proper audit of who commissioned it. They literally accepted it as a gift from the Senate and decided, hey, it's probably fine that this came from a dead Jedi's name, and nobody followed up. It's like someone left a crate of mystery weapons on their doorstep, and they just started handing them out like candy. And that's where the tragedy really hits. Because for all their flaws, the Jedi weren't villains. They were people who truly believed they were protecting peace. They raised generations of Padawans to be selfless, compassionate, wise, and yet those very values were twisted and used against them, not by brute force, but by slow manipulation. You look at Order 66 and see Jedi falling across the galaxy, masters dying alongside the clones they once called brothers, students betrayed in the middle of lessons, trusted soldiers turning on them in cold silence. There's no grand confrontation, no lightsaber duels, just shock, betrayal, and blaster fire in the back. And for many Jedi, they never even saw it coming. They didn't die in battle, they died in confusion. One second they were leading troops into war, the next they were alone, surrounded, abandoned by the very republic they swore to serve. It wasn't just the end of an order, it was the collapse of a way of life that had defined the galaxy for 1,000 years. Ahsoka losing her clones in the siege of Mandalore. Dipper Billaba falling to protect Caleb Doom. Kiara Mundi gunned down mid-charge. These weren't just action scenes, they were moments of heartbreak, because these Jedi weren't prepared. Not because they weren't strong, but because they still trusted the system that failed them. And that's what hurts the most. Not the betrayal itself, but the realization that they might have avoided it, if they'd just looked harder, listened deeper, or questioned sooner. And yet, for all the missteps, there's something hauntingly powerful about how it all came crashing down. Because the Jedi didn't fall in a blaze of glory, they fell in silence, in shadows, in a galaxy that suddenly turned cold. And that image, of Jedi dying one by one as Order 66 echoes across the stars, it sticks with you. It's one of the most unforgettable sequences in all of Star Wars. Not because of the action, but because of the emotion behind it. The music swells, the camera lingers, and we're forced to watch as heroes fall in the blink of an eye. Not in epic battles, but in quiet ambushes. There's a mythic weight to that collapse. Like watching an ancient temple crumble under the weight of time and arrogance. Palpatine didn't destroy the Jedi with brute force. He rotted them from the inside out, with whispers, war, and just enough doubt to make them question themselves when they needed certainty the most. And that's why Order 66 has lasted as one of the most iconic moments in film history. It's not just a plot twist, it's a reckoning. The moment when everything the Jedi stood for was tested, and, in many ways, found wanting. The fall wasn't a surprise. It was inevitable, and yet it still hits like a punch to the chest. Because deep down, we didn't just witness a defeat. We witnessed the end of an era, a final, echoing breath of something once great, fading into darkness. But here's the part we can't forget. Even after the fall, even after Order 66 scattered the Jedi to the wind, not all was lost, because some survived, and more importantly, some learned. They didn't cling to the old ways. They evolved, they adapted, and they became something new. Ahsoka walked away from the Order long before it collapsed, and somehow that gave her the clarity to survive it. She didn't rely on rules. She relied on instinct, compassion, and hard-earned wisdom. Qui-Gon trained Ezra not as a traditional Jedi, but as a mentor trying to build something better from the ashes. Even Luke, for all his flaws, tried to rebuild the Order with a sense of humility the Council never had. And Rey, in her own way, inherited both the mistakes and the potential of those who came before. The Jedi weren't erased, they were reimagined, not bound by dogma, but shaped by experience. Order 66 didn't end the light. It just forced it to find new forms. And in doing so, it created space for new heroes to rise. Not because they were chosen, but because they chose to keep going, to keep fighting, even after everything fell apart. And maybe that's the real legacy, not the fall, but the rise that came after. The spark that refused to die, even in the darkest night. Still, no matter how much hope rises, there's no undoing the cost of what came before. The Jedi fell, not just because they were betrayed, but because they made themselves vulnerable to betrayal. They put their trust in politics, in structure, in traditions that had grown too rigid to bend, and so they broke. Order 66 wasn't just a strategic blow, it was a philosophical one. It exposed every weakness the Jedi had ignored for generations. Their distance from the people, their reliance on outdated codes, their inability to see past their own reflection. They became symbols without substance, legends without learning. And in that final moment, as clone troopers turned their blasters and Jedi fell in confusion, you could feel the galaxy change, not with a scream, but with a hush, as something ancient came to an end, not with fire, but with silence. That's what makes it tragic. Not that it happened, but that it could have been stopped, if they had listened more, questioned sooner, let go of their pride, just once. Things might have turned out differently, but they didn't. And so the Jedi Order became a monument to its own downfall, a cautionary tale etched in the stars, waiting for the next generation to decide if they'll repeat it, or rise above it. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy my videos, please consider looking at my pinned comment and checking out the links for my Amazon storefront. It contains my favorite Legos, my gear in which I make videos, and comics that I read on a daily basis. I update it constantly, so please, take a moment and click on the link. On top of that, check out my second channel, Critical Analysis Hub Plus, and my third channel, Critical Analysis Hub XP. Just one click would go on a long way in supporting my channels and future in YouTube.